Hello, 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 and welcome to the Women's Rugby Pod. I'm Johnny Hammond, and you join us here. Really busy time, isn't it? News stories coming at us from every direction, games coming at us from every direction. It's exactly how we like it here on the Women's Rugby Pod. So much to bring up to date with. There's so much going on that we had to get a voice of real authority on today, and that's exactly what we've got for you. So many issues. We're going to be talking about Ireland, the unbelievable press conference and reaction from various parts of the media and players alike this week to comments made by Anthony Eddy, the Director of Women's Rugby over at the IRFU. We're going to be talking about England and New Zealand, the impact of those two games and what it means to the rest of the world and just how impressive were England. We're going to be talking about all the rest of the international fixtures as well. South Africa there, Wales, Japan, Canada, Scotland, USA, you name it. We will be talking about it all in the company of the Queen of Women's Rugby herself. Scrum Queens founder, creator, writer, the leading authority on women's rugby, the voice of it, really. Ali Donnelly will be joining us on the pod, but also to scoop up, to be a part of the wave of positivity coming out of Welsh rugby at the moment after last week's announcement of contracted players. We're going to talk to Keren Lake, one of the most experienced players in the Wales cap, to talk us about the game of the weekend, the victory, the celebrations, and just what it's meant to have a union who are publicly backing them and putting their money where their mouth is. We'll have all the international news from around the globe, if that wasn't enough, as well. Of course, Nadi Buthelezi will be bringing us up to date with all that news. But first, let's get the lady of Scrum Queens on the pod. Here's Ali Donnelly. It's an absolute pleasure, as it always is, personally and professionally, to have Ali Donnelly on the pod. Ali, how are you? How's the family?
Very good, thank you. I have two young girls now who I'm really looking forward to bringing to the England game this weekend for their first test rugby for them. So that'll be good fun. So yeah, I'll be the person running around like a crazy person in the stands. But yeah, they're good. They're good girls.
Awesome. Are you going headphones? You going the ear mufflers?
Well, they're 5 and 1, so I think they'll be all right.
They'll be all right. Yeah, and it will be a huge crowd. Oh, look, we'll look forward to seeing you on Sunday. Ali, there's so much going on. It's a busy old autumn. Rugby Europe, South Africa on tour, Japan, Scotland, Ireland, all the home unions are involved. And obviously a huge week in terms of news coming out of your home country. So just no better person than the voice of authority on women's rugby to get us across all of these events. But we must start with Ireland and the situation that the Director of Women's Rugby and Sevens Rugby, Anthony Eddy, has caused this week.
Yeah.
Jaw-dropping stuff. I couldn't quite believe it. I had to read it about 15 times just to make sure that I hadn't got the wrong end of the stick. But if you haven't seen or heard those comments, Ali, what's been going on in terms of what Anthony has said and your takings from what he said?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, first of all, just incredibly disappointing to read it. And I think what it actually reflected was just a number of wider issues going on there that have been, a problem for a long time, but it's brought it all to the surface, I think, in one neat story. I think what we've got is, we've got disharmony clearly within this group, between the group, the players and those who lead it. And I don't know about you, but I found it really uncomfortable to read what he said. And what you were seeing there was someone sort of pointing fingers downwards. It's very hard as a group of amateur players mostly to have a voice. And it's been really great to see the players kind of band together over the last few days. So there's an issue there between the management and Anthony, whose job it is to promote the team and help the team and support them, and the players. And there's no, I think one of the problems the RFU have had for a long time, women's rugby, is just a lack of accountability. And you saw it so well there. He took on that role 7 years ago when Ireland were 4th in the world, won the Six Nations a few months later. The program has spiraled and he's led it. And, there are people listening like myself who work in jobs where you manage big teams and the buck does stop with you. And when there is failure and you oversee that, you have to put your hand up and say, I'm part of this at very least. And to not see that, I think was really, you know, kind of shocking. And you know, to see the RFU sort of in the way that they do, kind of row in behind him, was just really disappointing. So in the short term, there are a lot of issues there, but I think what I would say is it's indicative of a culture at the RFU. So people like me who've been dealing with the RFU for a long time, you know, I was a committee member on the original IWRFU back in 2000, 2001. So I was around when the merger was about to happen and so on. There is a culture there that suggests, you know, that gives off the sort of sense that the women are lucky to kind of get what they get. You know, what more do they want is the kind of the perception that you get from there. And that's very problematic. And, you know, the next few days and weeks, I don't think this issue is going away now. Will be really interesting to see what happens next.
I mean, that's one of the worst decisions that the IRFU has ever made, letting you go from that situation. Being flippant, but we are 20 years on, and we haven't moved on, Ali, as far as I can see. Literally haven't moved on a step further from those that are running the women's game in Ireland.
Well, I think culturally we haven't moved on. And I think the big problem they've got now is just there's no trust now between, you know, the players on the one hand or people involved in the programme around the country. Because, you know, you've seen reaction from not just international players today, but clubs and people who play in grassroots. So I think the culture, you know, many things have, of course, progressed. There are good programmes in place. You know, there's better standard of rugby being played at the club, played at the clubs. The team were successful, you know, within that 20-year period. But what you see there, you know, culture shows itself, you know, in different ways. And if you remember, not so long ago, the RFU had to issue 2 apologies for the embarrassing pictures that emerged of, you know, where the players, the Interpro players, were getting changed. If you remember a few months back, and this just constantly happens with them. So, you know, I think Jeanette Feary said it really well on Twitter. She talked about the merry-go-round of issue happens, apology, you know, we'll review it, and then we move on. Then it happens again a few years later. So there has been progress in 20 years, but the culture in the union and the trust between the women's game and those who are running it, you know, is poor. And you know this, in my day job, I'm a director of communications, and part of my role and the roles I've had for the last 20 years so is to advise people how to do interviews and how to speak. And so in that context, you know, it was a shocking interview. It was tonally, you know, it was tone deaf, firstly. I had no idea what he was trying to get out of it in terms of any objective. I know he was sitting there answering questions, and it was just incredibly dismissive. And I listened in that context of the job that I do and just thought, wow, this is appalling. And unfortunately, you know, they haven't, the RFU are silent, and we haven't seen them kind of say, look, we accept this and we accept there's a problem here. So, you know, we've made progress, but there are real problems there.
But it's as we've seen, I was going to make 2 points, but as we've seen, even the space of 5-6 days with Wales, and nobody knows who's got a contract, but contracts are now on the table. That's now public. Their performance and the reaction to tries and just what it meant to them, that they were being backed publicly, makes all the difference. And yeah, Wales are coming off a huge amount of losses and what have you, and Ireland obviously coming off a disappointing of not qualifying for a World Cup. But I think the other point I wanted to make was, if there was a men's team, everything's reactive rather than being proactive, and every single one of these bodies, and whether it be the women's sevens, the men's sevens, part of their ethos is excellence, and leaving the shirt in a better place. It's simply not the case. And as you say, it's all completely and utterly reactive. Oh, sorry for that. Oh, yeah, sorry for that. At some point, you've got to go, well, do you know what? It's just easier from a business point of view, isn't it? Just to be slightly more proactive, you don't have to keep dealing with the stuff.
Yeah, look, I think there's 2 things there. One is tone and language. It makes a huge difference. Yeah. And you saw WRU chair, when he was part of the contract announcement, strike a very good tone and talk ambitiously about women's rugby in Wales. And whether or not, you know, the solution they come up with is perfect, at least the players left that or gone into their autumn campaign feeling supported. Yeah. If you listened to or read the interview that Anthony Eddy gave this week, I mean, you'd be shocked to know that this person is in charge of women's rugby. He didn't even sound like he liked it. So, you know, that's the first thing. The second is we have a problem in the women's game generally. I mean, I talk about this a lot. where some unions, not all, just do not see it as an opportunity. They see it as a drain on resources or a cost, and not as something that can grow the game for them. So it could grow the game for them from a numbers perspective, which is happening in most countries. Women's rugby is the growth area in terms of participation, which is really important. That's what national governing bodies are for, to provide a game for everyone. And second, and this is a real problem from an Irish perspective, they don't want to see the link between investing now and getting a kind of commercial return later. So, as a result, you kind of get the bare minimum just to keep your head above water, and you're never able to sort of wash your own face from commercial perspective because the investment hasn't happened. So there's two challenges there, I think, and they're not specific just to Ireland, but obviously they've been the flare up this week. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it certainly appeared on the language that he used that are not particularly well hidden, that the players will be very disappointed with their performances, and again, it seemed that was where the blame was, despite reviews going on, a World Cup review. Is that the one being paused, or the general one?
There's a question mark now about this, because there was a review in 2017 and new targets were set, all but one were missed. They were up to next year. It was never published. The players weren't happy with it. And now we're having another one. I mean, I would question whether that should go ahead, because how can the players trust the RFU to, from a kind of corporate language perspective, mark their own homework again when they did it last time and it's failed? So, let's see where they get to in the next few weeks. But I'm not entirely sure, as good as Amanda Bennett is, and she's excellent, and she's been the person appointed to look at this, that that review can really be reflective of what's going on and actually come up with recommendations to solve problems. And what we really need, and I saw Bernard Jackman wrote this today brilliantly, is we need the RFU is run by a board of 25 people who are responsible for how the game is governed. 22 of those people are men, which is a conversation for another day. But we never see these people, and we never see them standing up saying, this is not okay. But maybe they're doing things behind the scenes, but right now we need them to stand up. Let's presume they're all going to go to the New Zealand game on Saturday. Let's presume they're not all going to be at the Ireland-USA game tomorrow night. But ultimately, we need to see some accountability, and we never get it from the RFU. And it does feel, I hope, that this is building momentum, and I'd really like to see them emerge and take some responsibility.
Yeah, because it's for all the words that you write, that our little podcast may say, and what have you. Actually, the reaction from the players started by Cliona Maloney, wasn't it? Didn't think as much. Didn't think it was much spreading season. Was her response to some of the comments. Ciara Griffin has come out disappointed by the comments made by the RFU director of women's rugby. An apology apparently has been issued to her from Anthony Eddy. But unbelievable swell of support, and actually, in terms of the girls progressing in rugby, that's not the important thing. But actually, the game in a healthy state, that's really impressive, isn't it? Actually, the players have had enough now, and therefore, they get rid of those players. And boy, if we think this is a sticky situation, then that would be even worse, wouldn't it? But actually, people have to get behind them now, and therefore, people at the very top making these decisions, not being accountable, have to listen, don't they?
Yeah, and probably we need to start putting pressure on the sponsors who are associated with Irish women's rugby. Are they happy to be connected to this? What pressure are they putting on the union? The people who fund the RFU, Sport Ireland, the government, and so on. What's their view? I think this is something that we can't sort of put the brakes on now and move on. This is something we need to keep pressing the accelerator on and keep the pressure on and see some actual tangible change. And just to your point about the players, I mean, very brave of Cliona to do that. There definitely have been situations in the past that I know of where Irish players have spoken up behind the scenes and been dropped, and she will have known that, and she did it anyway. So I was really relieved to see people rowing behind her today. I was slightly worried she was going to be left a little bit out there on a limb, but she wasn't. And the strength in numbers is important. But of course, a number of players in that squad are contracted sevens players who are employed by the RFU, so that does make it slightly more difficult. But good for the ones that have come out.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking, not just Ireland, is it? Where we hear the same stories from Wales of players putting their head above the parapet and yeah, promptly not getting included in the next squad. But look, we are where we are. They've got a test match. It's all unbelievable in a test match week. 7:15 at the RDS for the first time. That is the best way people can show their support. I think do it with your feet, do it with your wallet, get down to the RDS and give these girls. My goodness, don't they deserve some support come Friday night up against the USA?
Yeah, and it'll be a good game, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
the USA have just come off the back of 2 games in a week. I think for Ireland, it could go one or two ways. I was thinking about this before I came on. They'll either be completely and utterly motivated, galvanized, and go out there and have an absolute belter, or it goes the other way, and all of the problems we saw in the World Cup qualifiers where they just really didn't perform, which wasn't that long ago, will emerge again, and there's pressure on them and so on. So I think it's going to be a really interesting match, but Ireland should be confident, at home, hopefully a decent crowd. America have travelled here. They've got to be tired. 2 games in 5 days, travelled. Some of their best players aren't here. So Ireland should be confident, but let's see.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's Friday night. RT player as well, if you can't get down to the RDS. But yeah, we can't stress enough. Get yourselves down there. The other thing I wanted to, we could talk for another couple of hours on that subject, but I only got you for before your gin and tonic glass is empty again, and you need it refilling. Just want to talk about England, New Zealand. Off the back of those 2 games, highly anticipated to the mini series. England obviously now going to Canada, New Zealand off to France. 99. Where's my notes? 99-27 over the 2 games. That's the world champions against the only fully professional outfit in the world. Is it as simple to say, well, there you are, that's what you get with professionalism?
Yeah, it was fascinating. I had England as heavy favourites to win the first match at least, but if you told me this combined scoreline over the 2, I wouldn't have believed you. I think I imagine the New Zealand Rugby Union must be a bit perplexed back in New Zealand, because by their own standards, right, they have invested more than they've ever invested in women's rugby over the last year or 2. They bid for the World Cup, they got it. They've given players semi-professional contracts. They've introduced a Super Rugby competition, and yet, look what's happened. And I think the problem they've got is that historically they've underinvested, right? And it's taking a long time for them to catch up. And England have just raced ahead and left them behind. And those 2 things are, problematic for them. So I think what will be fascinating is to see what they do. So do they carry on as they were planning to carry on, have their 1-month Super Rugby competition next spring, and hope the players improve enough in a year? Or do they do something drastic and say, actually, for 6 months, just like England did in 2017, if you remember, let's go pro for X period and throw everything we've got at this and see what happens. So fascinating for them. I almost had sympathy for the New Zealand Rugby Union when I thought about that. But, decades of historical underinvestment kind of catching up with them. England were amazing. I think that's the smartest I've ever seen them play against New Zealand for sure. But one thing I would say is really important is that this is, to me, the fittest, strongest England team I've ever seen. And it's going to take, they're going to get better. It's going to take, something significant for New Zealand to turn that around in a year, 11 months now. But boy, what fun games they were.
Yeah, outstanding. I like you. Yeah, England had to be favourites. I was incredibly impressed on the first test by the Red Roses, and actually thought they didn't play poorly, but left 30, 40 points out there. But the second test to then drub 56-15, second week up, when the All Blacks are coming back after a week being together and what have you, I thought was even more impressive. Tactically, where do you think England got it right? Yes, they look, as you say, very, very fit, very, very sharp. Some standout performers for us, as you say. There's 5 or 6 players to come back into that, including Emily Scarratt.
Yeah, I think it's actually quite difficult to pick, one area or two areas because they were superior everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
And they, their skills were better, their decision making was better, and that's before you even start talking about, set piece and defense and attack and so on. They were just much, much better. And I think actually, you're in a world now where you're thinking, are New Zealand going to get to the World Cup final next year? That's where you're at now. But that's why these two games against France, I think, are interesting. My sense before the tour was that we wouldn't see the best in New Zealand at all till games 3 or 4 because of the layoff and all the other things. And so I don't know if that will come to pass, but these 2 games are going to be great. I don't know if you've seen the French team, but it's brilliant. One of the best French teams I've seen in ages. And so this is not going to be easy for New Zealand.
Yeah, go on then. Who's gonna scrape that one?
Well, I think France favourites definitely for both tests, particularly the first one because they're back in Pau. They're going to have a big crowd. Look at the team sheet; it's good. Safi Ndai and Jessie Tomori are on the bench. Big plus for New Zealand is that Kelly Brazier's back, and she does make a huge difference to them. But I don't see them. New Zealand have won the last 2. France have beaten New Zealand the last 2 games.
Yes,
they're not afraid of this team. They'll have watched England take them apart. I think. If this was away, maybe you'd say, I'm not sure, but this is at home. I think France will beat them this weekend. And, maybe I can't call the last test yet, but, what it would be frankly hard to believe a few weeks ago that they could go home with 4 test losses. And that feels very possible now.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it seems like they're on the cusp of that. So that's France, New Zealand. England take on Canada. Canada just having had a couple of victories over the US of A. What are you going to make of that game? Do you think England will change up, use some of the fringe type players? I've not seen a team yet.
I haven't either. You'd suspect if they're going to, it will be in the latter half of this game and certainly the game the week after. It's interesting though. In some ways, it's possible Canada will give them a tougher game than they got from New Zealand, and that sounds kind of an incredible thing to say, but they have been playing. They've got very good players. Karen Paquin, is one of the world's best. She's played really well in the tests. And so it'll be a good game. England, I think, will win for all the reasons we've just set out, and they're at home. But it won't be, it won't be an easy game. They may well, as I say, put up a stiffer test than New Zealand did, which is kind of an incredible thing to say. And yeah, let's see what change Simon Middleton makes. I mean, he must be loving life right now.
Selection headaches, all over the place.
Yeah, look how if there wasn't a World Cup next year, you'd tell him to retire now, right? But it'll be good to see some fringe players come in. But some of the England players, Abby Dow, I think has been incredible. Best, just amazing. She, Portia Woodman was good last weekend, but Abby Dow over the 2 tests, just sensational. So many young players in the pack as well, just standing up, I think, just very, very impressive. Leanne Riley, the scrum half, you just would never want to play against, just annoy you so much, but one of those brilliant 9s, great player. So yeah, there's so many players in form for England. Be interesting to see who he picks.
Yeah, indeed. So and I have to agree with you. I think because Canada got that, certainly that front 5, that 8. It is good, and there are some combinations there that have played for a long time together, played together at a club, some of them in the UK. I think that set piece battle is going to be far, far harder for England, and therefore that front foot, that launch pad is going to be far less stable for England. So I'm absolutely with you. Wales, Japan. Was last weekend 25-5. We spoke about just very, very briefly. Wales obviously take on South Africa this weekend. Let's just talk about Wales. It was a very buoyant performance, and you saw what it meant to them. A deserved victory, and where you would expect them to be after such good news the week before.
Yeah, two kind of perfect tests to follow up that news, I think, in some ways, because they beat Japan. They're likely to beat South Africa, but I think it'll be a tougher game. They played well against France, and they're really getting their act together, and that's why they hired someone like Lynn Cantwell, and she's with them, in camp, and they'll be good this weekend. But yeah, for Wales, it's exactly what you want. It's a bit like when England start the Six Nations against Italy and Scotland or whatever. There's time to bed in, and they've got that. So fair play. Wales have had a rough couple of years. Those players have been through the mill on and off the pitch. It's, you know, I think I wrote somewhere last week that I found it kind of uncomfortable to watch Joanne Lillicrap have to explain what the last year's been like negotiating with the WRU. You know, she shouldn't have to be doing that. Players should be focused on playing. And it was, you know, it was quite hard to see that, you know. Yeah. I think I said, you know, the battles they should be fighting are on the field, and yet, you know, the most important ones are off it. So they deserve some success. They deserve a big night out, and you know, I'm sure this weekend's game they'll be favourites, and it'll be a good match.
South Africa, then. You've mentioned the lady that we had on the pod a couple of weeks back, Lynn Cantwell, doing unbelievable things. So it would seem, it just seems to be a whole lot more noise, loads more games on television. They come over here, 46-3 against France last weekend. They, as I said, taking Wales this weekend. I thought that's actually a reasonably impressive performance, or certainly scoreline anyway.
Definitely, they played well, and I think you know, they seem to have a great culture amongst the group, and you'll have seen some of the videos of them, you know, celebrating and singing. Look, there's a reason the South Africa Rugby Union hired Lynn Cantwell and went after her. You know, Rassie Erasmus is very involved in the women's program in terms of the direction of it there. So they are taking it very seriously, and in a way they haven't done before. And, you know, the next World Cup will be too soon for them to do anything spectacular, but, you know, the steady progress and that, you know, building up of experience, these games would be brilliant for them. We don't see enough of South Africa, and there was years where they didn't play at all. So, yeah, they're definitely a team, I think, on the up. And African rugby generally, you know, if you guys watched Kenya during the Olympics and so on, you know, there's some really great talent if it's just invested in, and South Africa are the team who've got that at the moment. So, yeah, pretty good time for the African nations at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, some sevens, African sevens on last weekend. South Africa, I remember doing 2010 World Cup, and South Africa literally hadn't played a game in 4 years or something, and Australia had either. But so they're coming a long way. So yeah, delighted for them, and yeah, some brilliant social media stuff coming out of them. What a great experience for them. The last game, I think it's on Sunday. Scotland take on Japan. Scotland presumably buoyant, riding on the crest of the wave of giving themselves that opportunity to still compete at the World Cup.
Yeah, and although they did it at the expense of Ireland, which I was very gutted about, you know, I was really happy for them. They like Wales, like they've been through a tough time. I mean, one of the things about Scotland, which is very interesting, I'd forgotten that this had happened until recently. A few years ago, they gave a number of players, I think 10 players, contracts, and they called them 2021 contracts. And the whole sort of ethos in there was around qualifying for this World Cup. And that single-mindedness is about to pay off, I think. I think they will qualify. I think they'll go to the qualifiers and get through. And, you know, you have to take your hat off to the Scottish Rugby Union. They don't have the resources that England have, say, but they made a strategic decision there. It looks like it's about to pay off. And look, they'll beat Japan, I think. They should, although, you know, Japan can be very good at times, and they did well against them the last time. But, you know, they also deserve a big night out. I'm advocating for nights out here.
You are indeed. As she reaches for a gin tonic again. Ali, no, yeah, I agree. I think Scotland will get to that World Cup. And yeah, deserve it to them. Now you're looking at not just a 15 that's very competitive, but you're now beginning to look at 23, 25, 26 players which are competitive and give selection headaches, and that's the place to be. Certainly going into.
I'd like to think before we go that one of the things that's really helping the Welsh team, you know, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland a little bit, is just the quality of the league here in England. And I didn't mention that up top, but that's the other sort of driver of where England are now. You know, we saw Simon Middleton saying before the series he didn't have any worries about throwing relatively new players in against New Zealand because the quality of the league was so high. And Scotland have benefited from that. Lots of their players are playing in the league. You know, same at Wales. I mean, most of their players seem to be playing in the league. So yeah, that has become, you know, just a hugely important driver of the game here in this part of the world, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, hugely so, and as you say, benefiting everyone. And I also think it's right that there should be no apologetic tone to what England are doing. You know, again, I thrashed my head against a brick wall of saying you could do more in certain areas, and I believe they certainly could, but certainly leading way and dragging everyone else with them, and it's for everyone else to catch up rather than England to put the foot on the brake. So no. couldn't agree with you more. Ali, marvellous to chat to you. I've taken so much of your time, so much of your evening when you've got a proper day job to get to and all the rest of it. And no doubt you'll only have about 3.5 hours sleep before you're up against changing nappy or something. So, look, thank you so much for your thoughts. I know people absolutely love having you on the pod. Always a real treat to speak to you personally as well. So thank you very, very much as ever.
Thank you, and thanks for all you're doing.
I'm Annie Capeless, and you're listening to the Women's Rugby Pod.
Ali Donnelly there, always absolutely brilliant, isn't she? Very, very clear thinker, a lady clearly very, very intelligent, works in communications, and that's very, very obvious to see, isn't it? Love her point about the Irish Rugby Union and that culture that is clearly still lingering at the IRFU. But if your players are coming out and saying it's wrong, then do you know what? Something must be wrong. And full credit to the likes of Cleena Maloney, to the captain, Ciara Griffin, Anna Capeless, these kind of players coming out and saying, do you know what, this just isn't good enough and we've had enough. And fair play to them. So just a reminder of the international fixtures then this weekend. All kicks off Friday night at the RDS. Historical game. Ireland women playing their first game at the RDS ever, take on the USA. That is live on the RT player. But please, 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 if you're in the area, well, what a great way to start the weekend anyway. Got the men against the All Blacks. Why not get out to the RDS on Friday night and that literally give your feelings with your feet and your wallet. On Saturday, France take on New Zealand at the Stade de Hamel in Po. Wales play South Africa, as we say, at the Cardiff Arms Park, live on S4C. Also on Saturday, Switzerland take on the Czech Republic, and Africa Cup action as well as Namibia host Zambia. And if you didn't catch it, England play Canada at the Stoop on Sunday, live on BBC Two here in the UK. And also on Sunday, that's Scotland against Japan game. That'll be streamed live on the Scottish Rugby Union website. Let's get more of the news then, shall we? From around the globe. Here's Nandi Buthelezi with Nandi's News.
Well, thank you, Johnny. I am, of course, Nandi Buthelezi, coming from South Africa. It's been another exciting week of women's rugby, and we do kick things off this week with the Barbarians having named a number of English powerhouses of women's rugby in their first squad announcement for the upcoming match against South Africa on the 27th of November. The Killick doubleheader at Twickenham will see the famous names of Rochelle Rocky Clark, Katie Daly McLean MBE, and Natasha Mohand take to the field in the Barbarians shirt. These announcements mark just how strong the Barbarian side will be, remarked head coach Joe Yap. More to follow right here on the Women's Rugby Pod. We will also be bringing you a special Barbers episode in a couple of weeks' time, so please do stay tuned for that. Canada secured the inaugural Pacific Four title with a second win over the USA in a week. In Colorado, a tight match against the two North American sides saw Canada edge ahead 26-13. They led 19-10 at the break, after which the tight affair continued. 2 yellow cards to Canada's lock Laetitia Arroyo turned to a red card, and Canada were down to 14 players from the 63rd minute. But the deadlock was broken with Canada's Karen Paquin putting Canada to 26-13, where the score remained until the final whistle. Over to Europe and the Rugby Europe Trophy. 2 championship sides resumed international test this weekend. Belgium headed to Amsterdam for their first test against each other since 2018. Big changes to both squads, with Belgium only recently announcing the return of its 15s program again, whilst 5 debutants appeared on the Dutch roster. The Netherlands won 44-0 against Belgium, but despite a resounding win for the Dutch, 5 tries in the first half, the Belgian players reportedly were pleased with their performance. Belgium now prepare and build for the next test against Portugal on the 4th of December as part of the European Trophy. Czech Republic kept their European Trophy dreams alive this weekend, recording their biggest ever test win score against Finland, winning 39-12. They ran in a total of 7 tries against the Finns, which puts them second on the table behind Sweden. They now travel to Switzerland in the next match this weekend in Nyon. The Welsh RFU announced last week as a major investment in the women's game, including professional contracts to some 25 players over the next 12 months. They've announced 10 full-time contracts with an additional 15 retainer contracts, plus there'll be match and training fees. Contracts are currently being drawn up, expecting to come into effect in January 2022. The IRFU have appointed Aidan McNulty as Ireland's Women's Sevens head coach ahead of the HSBC World Rugby Sevens Series. McNulty had been interim coach for the conclusion of the 2021 campaign, but will now take over on a full-time basis. The IRFU are in hot water once again, at this time from Anthony Eddy, the Director of Rugby for Ireland 7s and 15s program's defence of the current state of investment in women's rugby in Ireland. In a pre-match media interview, Eddy rejected suggestions that the 15s program has been neglected in favour of the 7s team, branding it incorrect to make such suggestions. This is a time where there are currently no full-time 15s women's professional contracts, while 7s players are and on the back of Ireland failing qualification to the World Cup earlier this year in Parma, where Eddy suggested blame solely on players' performances. This is also a time where the IRFU are conducting 2 reviews into women's rugby, one examining Ireland's World Cup failure and another on how to implement World Rugby's 2018-2023 Women in Rugby Action Plan. Further in this defensive interview, Eddy suggested that investing in the Irish women's game will ultimately not lead to Ireland to being left behind against rival nations. Irish players have slammed Eddy's comments, including internationals Cliona Maloney branding it slurry spreading, Claire Molloy deeming it truly disheartening and disappointing, and Jenny Murphy classing his stance as spineless. More to follow. Andrei Kuzin has left the post of head of the Russian 7 squad. Alexander Alexyenko has been appointed as interim coach. Staying with 7s, Canada are recruiting for a national women's 7s team head coach, so get those applications in. And I must say, it's good to see that a public recruitment process is being followed rather than an internal one. And still keeping with your 7s news, teams have been announced for the Asia Rugby 7s Trophy, which will take place in Dubai on the weekend of 26th-27th November. The women's competition will see contests between Nepal, India, Uzbekistan and China. Looking over to domestic rugby in the second round of the Prem Cup in England, which took place this weekend, and in Pool A, Bristol beat Wasps 33-10, while Quins beat Gloucester Hartpury 29-12. DMP was on a bye this weekend. And in Pool B, Loughborough lost at home against Saracens, losing 22-12. Exeter beat Sale 19-0 at home, with Worcester on a bye. This weekend is the third and final round of the Prem Cup before there is a week's break, and round 6 of the Premiership will then return on the 27th of November. This weekend in Pool A, Wasps will take on Quins. Gloucester Hartpury will play host to DMP, and Bristol will be on a bye. And in Pool B, Saracens will take on Sale. Exeter will play Worcester. Loughborough will be on a bye. Meanwhile, in Ireland, round 6 of the All Energia League continued. Gilvegians lost at home against Blackrock College, losing 19-5, while Malone failed to put any points on the scoreboard against UI Bohemian, losing that clash 28-0. Old Belvedere won 28-21 against Cook, while Railway Union bagged a massive 62-3 against Etonians. Wicklow RFC won 15-10 against Melancholic. This means that Blackrock College fall to 4th on the table with 24 points, whilst Old Belvedere and UI Bohemian moved to 1st and 2nd place, both on 25 points and 5 wins from 5, but Old Belvedere in front on points difference. Railway Union moved to 3rd, also on 24 points. Round 7 of the All Energia League resumes on the 27th of November, so no matches for the next 2 weeks. But round 16 of the All Energia Cup will take place on the 20th.
Malcolm, and you're listening to the Women's Rugby Pod.
Nandi, thank you very much. Brilliant to get all the news from around the world. We'll see you next week. There's loads going on, isn't there? So you'd expect from the fastest growing team sport in the world. There was loads of news last week from Wales, wasn't there? As Nigel Walker announced contracts for 15s rugby players, international rugby players in Wales. And Wales took on Japan at the weekend. And it was just lovely to see, as Ali Donnelly was talking about earlier on in the pod, the pain, Sharon Lillicrap talking and trying to explain the actions of her union again. But to see the delight of tries being scored and just what it meant to the players to be backed by them. Well, look, enough of what I observed. Let's talk to a lady who was right in the thick of it. One of the most experienced players in the Welsh camp, Karen Lake, joins us now on the WRP. A very, very good morning to Welsh International of some standing. Karen Lake, very good morning to you, Karen. How are we?
Good, thank you. All good.
Yeah, you're at work at the moment?
Yeah, just in work. So, just managed to catch 20 minutes.
Oh, very good. What do you do outside of putting it in for your country?
Yeah, so I work in Tana Hospital in the community mental health team, just providing some admin support to them.
Okay, great stuff. Well, it's reasonably obvious why we've got you on. There is a huge amount of news firing around the women's game at the moment, but obviously we're going to concentrate on Wales with yourself. Let's get into last week's news. Contracts, your initial reaction as a very experienced member of that squad to that announcement?
It was very exciting. I know it's a cliche answer, but it's, to see where, I've been involved for quite a long time now in the Welsh setup. So to see an actual outcome come in to help support the players, it's only really exciting. Like myself, I'm maybe towards the end ish, coming up to the end of the career, but for the youngsters and the future of Wales rugby, it's only a positive start, and that is what it is as well. It is just a start, so things can only get better,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was quite a lot of noise on both sides in terms of positivity and negativity, but you got to get on the wheel first to start with, haven't you?
Exactly. Like you said, you've got to start from somewhere. And, if they're starting at this, 10 full-time, 15 semi-pro, that's 25 contracted players without then the extra, funding for players who are in campaigns. That's a good amount of contracts being offered. Yes, they might not be, life-changing sums, but it's still enough for girls to question whether they can leave their jobs, leave their roles, to live as well, like you said, it is just a start.
Yeah. No, I think there's a point certainly we made on the podcast with Lisa Burgess last week and social media. So it's a really good start, as long as it is just a start. And obviously the huge amount of excitement around the squad going into this autumn campaign, and that certainly showed at the weekend against Japan.
Yeah, it's been
fun, right?
Yeah. It was hard work, obviously, as any international would be. And, when you're chasing the win after 2 years, it's, you do kind of put more pressure on yourself. It's hard to get out of that rut. But I think the coaching setup we've got now at the minute, it's when we came in beginning of autumns and then we were told that they're going to be there till the end of the World Cup. I think that had a turning point as well, knowing that, sorry, we're not going to learn something for autumns and then going to change for Six Nations. That's going to change again. We've really bought into what the coaches are asking and the structures, the training, and I think the girls proved that and showed that performance on Sunday. Sorry, it was just a win that we really desperately needed, to be honest. But now comes if we can back it up this weekend, then it's not just a one-off.
Yeah, absolutely. I was interesting, making that point because there has been a lot of uncertainty, but I mean, Karen, it's not rocket science, is it? Your people 90% of the time, rugby players 10% of the time. You've got a lovely young lad. You give them parameters and things to look forward to and what have you. Then you can buy in. It's no difficult. And now you've got the Welsh Rugby Union. You could see it in your play. People are backing us.
Yeah,
people care, and whether it's that solid coaching system or contracts or whatever, people behind us are backing us, and now we can properly represent the WRU properly.
Yeah.
And it massively showed in the performance. Was a lot of that kind of stuff spoken about pre-game?
Nothing.
It doesn't need to.
Yeah, that's it. You know, we've got that now. That's been said. We know what's the outcome of it. It's just up to us now to take the field, and you know, the coaches can only provide so much. It's up to the players then to step up as well. Having that, you know, because we still don't know with the contracts either. You know, not much is being spoken at the minute because obviously we've got a job in hand. But just like you said, it's in the back of your mind. You've got something to play for. You've got something to push you, drive you that little 1% extra maybe. And have the positive press for a change as well. You know, it's not negative. We should stop playing. You know, we've seen a big turn of positivity from the public, and you know, some stuff on social media is more positive, or rather aimed at the WRU rather than players. So it's nice. It took from this year anyway. It's taken a big chunk of weight off the shoulders. And me personally, I always read into social media. I know they say not to, but it's hard not to when it's there all the time. So it's nice to see the public with us as well, and supporting us and pushing for it as well, not giving up. You know, questioning every week, questioning where it is, what's happening. You know, it is good.
Yeah, no, as you say, people sort of realising that you can just get on with what you're supposed to do and just play the game. And concentrate on that. And actually, with a 23-5 win against Japan at the weekend, really, really buoyant performance. Expecting similar kind of things against South Africa this weekend. Slightly unknown quantity, although they are beginning to put their ducks in a row, aren't they?
Yeah, that's it. And it's hard because, like with COVID, we've been lucky over here in Britain that we've still been able to play some sort of rugby. So they might have some, you know, club games on people and stuff. But with South Africa, you know, 2 years ago, I think it was the last time we played them. You know, they have had that game last week against France, which was really good for us actually, because at least we've got something to analyse.
Yeah.
But yeah, we think it's going to be a different kind of game to Japan. You know, Japan brought just so much intensity and, you know, constant. I think ball in play time was like 39 minutes or 40 minutes, something like that. You know, it really did test us, just on a different kind of style of play. But we know South Africa, you know, they big ball carriers. They're quite similar to us as well. You know, they got some, you know, we feel they're going to truck it up a bit. We're going to have to be on, you know, on point with our defensive game as well. I don't know. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And televised on S4C, which is great, as was last weekend. We'll put those details out in the pod as well, so people can tune in. Will be a great occasion. Are you happy with with where you sit now? Obviously, you mentioned it slightly earlier. There's an opportunity potentially to get a contract to be paid for something that you've voluntarily done and given a huge amount of time and sacrificed lots and lots, I'm sure. Are you happy that where you are, that you've got to bridge those two, you know, amateur and professional, or would you prefer to potentially sort of be 8-10 years younger?
Well,
not that I've got a magic wand to go, oh, here you are, Karen. Let's rewind time. You're now 10 years younger. But it's a hypothetical question.
In an ideal world, yeah, it would be 10 years younger to be offered something like this. But, you know, that if I was offered a contract, you know, that is something I'd have to take up with my employers then as well. It's not as straightforward for myself and some of the other girls. You know, it could be a risk because, like, my age as well, you know, would I quit a job to take a contract? It's something that will have to be a lot of thought into. But 10 years younger, I'd bite the hand off if I was offered. You know, it's something I've dreamed of, and it's exciting. Yes, it's coming at the end of my career, but it's exciting. This is where Welsh rugby's going, and you know, kids that are maybe, I don't know, quite at that influential age, maybe 14, 15, playing 2 sports, don't quite know which one to go down to. There is a professional way now where they can have an earnings, make a living on rugby. They don't have to choose that other now. You know, having this, yes, the pathway might not be there as of yet, but making the senior team professional or semi-professional as well, you know, that's only going to filter down, and then hopefully in a couple of years we got that pathway coming through and feeding the national team. But it's really exciting. I'm just really excited for the future of Welsh rugby, rather than, you know, maybe not myself personally, maybe for a year or two, especially leading up to World Cup, but for the future, really excited for them.
I was going to say, you said coming towards the end of your career. I've gone nowhere near that, Karen. I've not said anything like that. I've never said. But no, look, it is massive. Possibly a slightly silly hypothetical question, but I think, you know, a bit of coaching that I do, to have people like yourself, like Kereth Phillips, you know, Sian Lillicrap, that those more experienced players, Shona Powell-Hughes may well come back in once she's qualified to put fires out. You know, those kind of experienced people that can anchor the squad to say, well, you guys have got it brilliantly, and actually just accept what you've got, and be you know, not overly thankful, because it should happen, but actually just be in a good place about it.
Fight for as well, isn't it? You know, you've got to be a bit grounded. You can't just come in and think you're, I don't know how to say it in a nice way, in a polite way. You know, you cheese, like, without swearing. I don't know what to say. But yeah, they've got to know that, you know, this is fought for. And I think a lot of the girls now, the younger girls, they've really had an eye opener as well of what, especially the last, say, 6 months, of what we've been fighting as a players group as well. It just makes it that more special that we have moulded it a bit. We have contributed. You know, we have had talks and input into what we want then as players. You know, it's not we've gone, this is what we're having and that's it. But we've helped and said this is what will help us. You know, it's, you know, we've asked for time. That's the main thing, is allowing us time. Just, you know, because we gave me back in work. It's not so much the money as such. The money's a bonus, but it's having the time having time to train at, you know, sociable hours, not having to travel, you know, long distances late at night. It's how to buy us time. And this is what we've come up with as a union, and as the players and the management. And, you know, this is what we feel will allow us to have that time. Yeah,
sorry for interrupting. And it's not difficult, is it? We've seen the Red Roses. Yeah. That's a really professional outfit, putting 99 points on you know, the world champions over 2 games, and you know, that professional, you know, preparation is very, very clear for absolutely everybody to see. I just want to pick up one thing you just said there. How much consultation did you senior players or the players have with the WRU?
The WRU were very open. They have been brilliant. Nigel Walker coming in has been really open. You know, he came in before his appointment as well, so he started, you know, little things going before he even was getting paid to work in the WRU in his position anyway. So, you know, there's been conversations, meetings. The leadership group has been back and forth between us and them as well, like passing on things that have been discussed in meetings. You know, they've been really open with us and honest. Like, every time they've heard something, they've come into the squad and announced things. You know, it has been really good.
And a real change. Well, you've just done your case for a contract a world of good there with that last answer. No, I'm joking. Do you know what? It's really nice, and you know, we verge on the side of positivity here on the WRP. But when you interview Sian Lillicrap, your captain, and you can just see the hurt behind the eyes, and it's soul destroying. But to hear you come on and be so positive and genuinely positive about the future and what's going on now, it genuinely is really, really delightful to hear. So yeah, as Sian said on one of her tweets over the last few days, we're going places, and yeah, it truly feels like that. And I'm to a player, I'm delighted.
Yeah, that you know, that hurt and feel let down and everything, with them coming in now, it's kind of changed to the positivity. You know, it's, oh, actually, they are listening. They are wanting change. They are backing us. It feels more, well, it's believable than more it's ever been. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, they've dangled that carrot a couple of years ago and nothing ever came of it. And then they dangle it again the following season. And you think, oh, is it going to be like last year? Yes, it is. It's another one coming in. And you think, this year, I don't know, it's just some, well, obviously it's come out in the press now, you know, we've believed them, they've believed us, and we've got to have that positivity. We've got to take that forward. We can't dwell in it anymore now. You know, we have given everything. We have, you know, sacrificed loads, but it's got to come, and we've got to take that positivity now. We just got to roll with it.
And you've got to deliver.
And yeah, exactly, yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Give them something back as well.
Great stuff. Just break a touch there, Karen. I'm gonna we'll leave it there. Let you get back to work. Thank you so much for joining us today on the WRP. Really, really appreciate your honesty, and it's lovely to see a great big beaming smile on your face.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Brilliant to have Karen on the pod. It was her first ever podcast. So she just said, can't believe that. Speaks very, very well. Spoke really honestly, didn't she? And openly, just to the joy. You could hear it, see it, almost feel it. That they are in a very, very different position to what they were 10 days ago. Union publicly backing them, putting their money where their mouth is. And that's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, good performance against Japan. You could see how much it meant to them. They take on South Africa this weekend. So, yeah, a chance to get another win on the belt. South Africa, again, a chance for them to really, really grow on this tour. Learnings all the time can only be a valuable exercise for them. So we will bring you news of what happens at the Cardiff Arms Park next week on the pod. But that about wraps up this week's Women's Rugby pod for you. A couple of shout outs to finish though. Southwest London, Richmond RFC, one of the oldest clubs in the world. They have launched a girls' youth section. Well done, Richmond. So many people doing it now. These just double your numbers. It's quite simple. Just double your numbers at a rugby club. Put in a new shower block, new change rooms, and double your numbers. It's not rocket science. Anyway, head down to Richmond on Sunday the 14th. That's this Sunday for a free taster session. If you're in the area, it'll be bags of fun. If I know anything about Richmond, I've taken kids down there to play. It's a really, really good day. So yeah, free taster session before the women's match against Bath. So yeah, head down to Richmond RFC Sunday 14th. So this Sunday for your free taster session before their women's game against Bath. Another shout out to the Carlisle Cougars, who are raising funds for their club after the COVID has decimated their financial situation by doing a naked calendar. But fair play to you, ladies. You can grab one off their website or head to their Instagram, which is at Carlisle Cougars RUFC. I'll say that again. At Carlisle Cougars RUFC. Fair play. And I should be racing to the Instagram account right now. Just leaves me to say a huge thank you to our guest, Karen Lake, Welsh International, to Scrum Queens, Ali Donnelly. Brilliant to speak to them both. Thank you to the team behind all of this, to Sean, to Tom, to Bluebell. Thank you guys for listening as well. You can get in touch. Someone from America got in touch about an event happening in March, and we responded. They couldn't quite believe that we'd responded, but of course, if you get in contact with us and ask us to give a shout out, we absolutely 100% will. So don't be afraid. At Pod Women's Rugby, we're across Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it. We are across there as well. Get a bit chilly as well. We've got jackets, beanies, snoods, mid layers, base layers, top layers, any kind of layer you like in our shop. Bit of WRP stash. Haven't seen any photographs coming out on our social media of people in our stash in various places. But anyway, www.hornborough.co.uk. www.hallbro.com/WRP. That's www.hallbro.com/WRP. Thank you very, very much once again for listening. Do rate and subscribe if you haven't already. We will see you next week. Enjoy the plethora of rugby coming at you this weekend. And let's stick shoulder to shoulder, shall we?